Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today for an interview.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
Today, all my questions I'll be asking you have to do with the overarching theme of society and how it influences individuals. I'd like to start off by talking about your thoughts on the ideal relationship between the government and its citizens. How should this dynamic work?
In my opinion, a smaller-scale democracy in which the citizens themselves form their own laws is ideal. The political power must reside with the people, where they are free to exercise their general will. Citizens meeting together, deliberating on laws, and majority voting is the best course of action if we want our society to prosper. And if a citizen refuses to obey any of the agreed-upon laws, they will be forced to be free.
Forced to be free? Could you explain what that means?
It means they're obligated to conform to our democracy if they wish to be a resident of the state, because the ideal society is a society where liberty, justice, and security are respected and enjoyed by all.
Thank you. And that concept you mentioned earlier, general will. Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. I predominantly talked about the concept of the general will in my book, The Social Contract. The general will is the collective desire of all the citizens in a society to promote safety and security. It is geared towards the common good instead of the personal interests of individuals or groups. The general will is sovereign, and it is the highest form of government because it represents the true will of the people as a collective entity.
And with the concept of modern society in mind, we see growing economic inequality, with people demanding more justice and fairness. Do you believe modern society can restore the balance between individual freedom and collective well-being, or have we strayed too far?
It's true that modern society has deviated far from equality and freedom in the state of man. Political turmoil and economic inequality are signs of a larger issue. Our obsession with material wealth and private interests, which has constrained people and turned them from their natural selves. We have forgotten about the common good in our quest for privilege and power.
So how do you propose to improve our modern-day society?
How I would improve society is to return to a state where humans act harmoniously and naturally, free from the corruption of the influences of the government and artificial authority. Society should revolve around the general will, and citizens should be the ones creating laws and ensuring that the government serves the collective. Following the general will should eliminate social inequalities that are formed from wealth, privilege, and power. Freedom truly exists when humans are all equal.
In this context, do you think people are inherently good or bad? And how does our free will play into this? Is there an extent to it that can harm society?
Man is born free and neither good or bad by nature. They're just innocent. It's society, with its inequalities and corrupting influences, that conditions us toward harm. The problem isn't with free will, it's how we can distort our desires, which can lead to selfishness and harm to others. Instead of limiting free will, the answer is to guide it in the proper direction. Free will works for the good of society with the right collaborative efforts and virtue. If we establish a social structure that balances individual freedoms with collaborative effort, we can create a community that is much less malicious than it is currently.
Shifting to another topic, in both the past and modern day, do you believe the differences in gender roles are natural, or are they shaped by society?
I've always believed men and women are inherently different, not just in terms of appearance but also in terms of purpose and mentality. I believe that these differences are fundamental to nature's design and not simply influenced by society.
So you think women are weaker?
No, you misunderstand me. These differences do not mean an inequality in value. In their own ways, men and women both contribute to the greater good. When women maintain the emotional role of the home and men carry out their responsibilities in the community, society functions at its best. It is based on harmony and balance found in the general will.
I see. On the topic of balance, is there a possible solution to reconciling freedom and authority?
I believe that there is a possible solution to reconciling freedom and authority, but it is at the cost of exchanging one type of freedom for another, as there won't be a net loss or gain of freedom. A possible solution to reconcile freedom and authority is to exchange natural freedom for civil freedom.
What's the difference?
Natural freedom is the unlimited right to all things. All humans enjoy their natural freedom, but to the extent of over-exercising natural freedom, It will cause violence and uncertainty. To reduce this risk, we can exchange this natural freedom for civil freedom, which is the security and safety of citizens. Other individuals or ones of the state cannot violate citizens. People have the right to security but must undergo a social contract that essentially states their exchange of natural freedom for civil freedom.
And how about your stance on religion?
In the state we live in right now, the concept of religion weakens the state, became a tool of political control, enslaving people instead of serving them. Look at the church. Far too often, it has supported oppression and preached obedience rather than liberty. I believe religion causes a divide between the people, and our society would be much better off without it. It is impossible to live in a society with people you think are damned. It only fosters chaos and hate.
Are you saying that in your ideal society, religion won't exist?
Not necessarily. Even though I personally don't see a need for it, many rely on the consolation of it. This is why the only religion I accept is a civil religion that accepts one God to satisfy the need for spiritual sanctity, while we focus on social contracts. If religion is really necessary, we should adopt a set of beliefs that uphold the rule of law, patriotism, and concern for the welfare of all. A true religion must never be used as a means of oppression.
Lastly, do you believe the education system adheres to your belief in freedom? If not, how would you modify the education system to furthermore adhere to your ideologies?
I believe that the current education system does not adhere to my belief in freedom. How I would change the current education system is by an idea I call negative education. Negative education is a child-focused approach to education that follows the natural development of the child. Rather than the teacher having all the authority and teaching a set curriculum, the child learns and discovers on their own, which will teach independence. There will also be a tutor to help assist the child in their education, but the tutor avoids direction so the child learns how to draw.
So, one could say that in conclusion, you contributed to liberalism through your advocacy for the general will and collectivism. Ideas regarding social justice were shifted by your critique of inequality, and modern democratic ideology has been influenced by your focus on democratic involvement and laws that represent the common good, even if your views were seen as controversial.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Rousseau.